My name is John Adlington and I am the Principal Clinical Engineering Technician in the Midland Regional Hospital at Tullamore, which is one of 3 hospitals based in the Midlands of Ireland. The hospital provides acute care services including an emergency department and is a regional centre for renal dialysis, orthopaedics, ENT, haematology and rheumatology. The Clinical Engineering Department consists of 5 technicians, including myself, with 1 clerical officer. Unfortunately, these technicians have always been very proactive in their response to issues within the hospital. This became even more apparent as the challenges of COVID-19 became more obvious. As with everyone, we have been monitoring the media coverage on the spread of COVID-19 throughout Europe since the beginning of the year, but it first affected the Midland Regional Hospital Tullamore in early March. Luckily, prior to the first case in Tullamore, we had received donning and doffing training, which had also alleviated some of the concerns the technicians had about dealing with COVID patients. But there was still some apprehension about the unknown. In addition, the senior hospital management team were holding daily oversight meetings with all heads of services to communicate the changes as and when it happened, with all of us dreading the news that the hospital had its first case. As with all hospitals, we needed to quickly identify the critical equipment we required to respond to the pandemic. And to ensure a standardised approach, the General Manager assigned me as a single point of contact for all equipment inquiries and requests for additional devices within the hospital. This included identifying the equipment required to add an additional 26 critical care beds and convert 103 day service bays into extra inpatient beds. Fortunately, with the introduction of a national requesting and distribution service, we were soon receiving some of the vital equipment required to deal with the pandemic. In 2008, the Midland Regional Hospital Tullamore was fortunate to get a new build hospital, which we had had 2 years to identify, procure and commission the 5,000 assets that were purchased for it. In response to COVID-19, we received another 1,000 devices which we only had a matter of days to commission and have in place ready for immediate use as and when it came in. Due to the unprecedented demand on the Clinical Engineering Department, our previously held monthly meetings were changed to a daily meeting. This allowed me to update all staff of the current status of the hospital and to allow us as a department to identify and discuss the tasks required and the challenges being experienced. The first priority for the hospital was to convert the outpatients and MRI recovery area into a COVID ED-19. Along with the closure of other day services in the hospital, Clinical Engineering responded swiftly by relocating equipment as required. As was expected, all the technicians were very apprehensive about going into COVID-signed areas, but these concerns were soon overcome after their initial experience. However, it was also very reassuring that any technician going into a COVID area will be in communication with another technician outside via a 2-way radio, who could either be a runner or provide technical help as required. The Midland Regional Hospital Tullamore was also very fortunate in that it had recently introduced a large 24/7 equipment library, which allowed us to move all commissioned and relocated equipment to a central location for supervised distribution to all areas of the hospital as required. This means that all the devices supplied in response to COVID-19 are commissioned and ready for immediate use. Due to the success of the equipment library since its introduction, it was agreed that this area should also be used as a central distribution hub to control and monitor the issue of PPE equipment throughout the hospital. This was supervised by the security department, but gave the confidence to all staff that this vital PPE was always available for use, as is the primary objective of the equipment library and all the equipment in it. We are a very heavy user in the National Reconfiguration CMMS, and as such it was essential that we documented all new equipment introduced and the relocation of devices that took place. Therefore, to ensure that this vital link for the monitoring of medical equipment was not compromised, we were fortunate enough to second our previous clerical officer who knew AIMS and our procedures very well, back to the department. As part of the reconfiguration in response to COVID-19, our theatre recovery and 4 of the theatres were converted into an ICU overflow, and part of our day hospital was converted into a theatre recovery. This became very useful when it was decided to add a number of negative pressure rooms into our existing ICU and required the temporary relocation of the department into the theatre recovery. As part of these works, we would result in breaking into the RO water loop, providing treated water to dialysis patients in ICU. This was seen as a perfect opportunity to extend the loop into CCU, which would not only future-proof the system, but would also allow a cardiac or non-COVID ICU patient to be treated in CCU. As the numbers of positive cases reduced, and we were just starting to get our breath back, we were then required to reconfigure the hospital back to its original services. This was almost at the point of completion, but now unfortunately we're in a state of anticipation as to whether we'll have to revert again to a COVID-19 configuration. As with all clinical engineering departments throughout Ireland, the demand on our services in response to COVID-19 was unprecedented. The increase in the amount of devices now available for use will undoubtedly have a long-term effect on the requirements of the department to maintain them in line with the manufacturer's recommendations. However, we have been recognised by all staff of the hospital for our achievements and continued support and professionalism. With our experience to date and the introduction of our central equipment library, we are now in an excellent position to manage the medical equipment within the hospital, regardless of whether there are continued COVID surges or not. Thank you.